At 46, I was driving drunk college kids through the rain for $14 fares, praying they wouldn't throw up in my back seat. 3 years earlier, I'd been Dr. Megan Parker, owner of a thriving dental clinic in Greenwich, a woman with a $5.9 million home, and a husband who loved being seen with me. Then, my father-in-law, Judge Richard Blackwell, decided I was unfit. In 6 months, he took everything: my clinic, my house, even my license to practice. "You'll never work again," he told me outside the courthouse, smiling like he'd signed my death certificate. He was right, until the night I picked up an elderly woman wearing pearls and a winter coat worth more than my car. She studied me in the mirror and said, "You're Elaine Parker's daughter, aren't you?" My hands froze on the wheel. My mother had been dead for 34 years, or so I thought. 3 years ago, my life looked perfect from the outside. Every morning, I drove my silver Tesla through the gates of Parker Dental and Aesthetics, a clinic I'd built from the ground up. We had 5 chairs, 8 employees, and a waiting list that stretched for weeks. I had the life every small-town girl dreams of: success, security, and a husband who bragged about me to anyone who'd listen. Daniel Blackwell was charming in that polished political way, just like his father. He called me my brilliant wife when we entertained guests in our sprawling Greenwich home. I should have known that charm runs cold in that family. It's a mask, not a heart. I discovered the affair on a Wednesday between 2 root canals and a veneer consultation. His paralegal had accidentally texted me instead of him. "I'll wear the red one tonight, your favorite." That night I confronted him. He didn't deny it. He laughed. "Megan, don't be dramatic. It's just an arrangement. People like us don't destroy families over feelings. People like us." I remember staring at him, wondering when I'd become one of them people who measured morality in convenience and power. When I filed for divorce, I thought it would be clean. I had proof of the affair, financial independence, my own career. But Daniel's father, Judge Richard Blackwell, made one phone call, and the entire system turned against me. It started small. Auditors appeared at my clinic randomly. A week later, the state dental board received an anonymous complaint that I'd falsified sterilization reports. The rumor spread faster than infection. Within a month, patients were canceling appointments, and my staff started quitting one by one. Then came the hearing. Judge Blackwell didn't sit on my case. He didn't need to. He owned the man who did. The courtroom was filled with whispers, cameras, and the smug smile of my husband's attorney, his father's protege. They painted me as unstable, unfaithful, and unfit to manage finances. A forensics accountant found offshore accounts I'd never heard of. A former assistant testified that I'd screamed at patients and threatened staff. Lies, all of them, but they didn't need to be true. They just needed to sound true. When the gavel fell, I wasn't Dr. Megan Parker anymore. I was the disgraced dentist. The house went to Daniel. The clinic was seized for outstanding debts. My license was suspended pending further investigation. Outside the courthouse, Judge Blackwell waited for me, coat draped over his shoulders like a king. "You were useful while you lasted," he said. "You kept my son's reputation clean, but you've served your purpose." He leaned closer, lowering his voice. "You'll never work again, Megan. I promise you that." Then he smiled. The kind of smile only men with unchecked power can afford: slow, deliberate, final. That night, I packed everything I owned into the trunk of my 10-year-old Civic. My diploma, my scrubs, my mother's photograph. By dawn, I was gone from Greenwich, erased, just like he wanted, or so he thought. I used to fix smiles for a living. Now I drove people who barely looked at me. Bridgeport wasn't home. It was a waiting room for people who'd run out of luck. I rented a tiny room above a laundromat that smelled of detergent and despair. The paint peeled, the faucet dripped, and the mattress sank in the middle like it was grieving too. My first night driving Uber felt like punishment. Every ping on my phone reminded me how far I'd fallen. Teenagers with glitter on their faces spilled fries in the back seat. Businessmen complained about traffic like it was a personal offense. I smiled, nodded, and drove, because silence was cheaper than dignity. Sometimes, I'd pass by other dental offices, the bright, sterile lights glowing behind glass. I'd slow down, just to watch hygienists closing up, locking cabinets, laughing about weekend plans. I used to be one of them. Now I was just a shadow in the parking lot. One night, I picked up a woman outside a bar downtown. She slurred her words until she suddenly looked up at me and gasped. Wait, weren't you that dentist? The one who lost her license? Her voice was syrupy with pity. Guess you really messed up, huh? I didn't answer. I just gripped the wheel until my knuckles turned white. Rumors were poison, and Judge Blackwell was the one who'd poured the glass. Every rejection letter that came in the mail was another confirmation of his reach. We regret to inform you. After reviewing your record, they always ended the same way, unfit for hire. I tried applying in neighboring states, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, but the background checks followed me. My name was radioactive. Even temp agencies stopped returning my calls. Once, I called the state licensing office, begging for an appeal. The clerk on the phone lowered her voice. Off the record, Dr. Parker. Someone powerful doesn't want you reinstated. I'd let it go. Her whisper cracked something in me. I hung up and cried in the dark parking lot until my chest hurt. It wasn't just the career. It was the silence from people I thought were friends, former colleagues, even my own cousin, who'd once called me her hero. They all vanished. Power makes cowards out of the comfortable. By month 3, my savings were gone. I sold my wedding ring to pay rent. I ate canned soup for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Every time I saw a gavel on TV, I felt bile rise in my throat. But what hurt most wasn't the hunger or humiliation. It was wondering if my mother, Elaine, would have been ashamed of me. I kept her old photo in my glove compartment, a black and white shot of her holding me as a baby. Dad used to say she died young, that she'd been too fragile for this world. I stared at her smile and whispered, "I'm still trying, Mom." That was before I knew she'd never stop trying either. Before I learned that while Judge Blackwell was busy destroying my life, my mother had been quietly building the weapon that would one day save it. It was a Tuesday night in November, the kind of cold that seeps through your coat and into your bones. The rain came down in sheets, blurring the world into streaks of light and motion. My phone chimed. Ride request. Fairfield Avenue. 11:07 p.m. Fairfield. The kind of neighborhood where driveways were longer than my entire street, where money smelled like cologne and old wood. I almost declined. Rich passengers meant small talk, complaints, and the faint scent of judgment. But the fare was $30. I needed gas and dinner. When I pulled up, the mansion loomed behind wrought iron gates, lights glowing in every window. An elderly woman stepped out, elegant and deliberate, a black wool coat draped over her shoulders and a string of pearls catching the streetlight. She moved like she had spent a lifetime being obeyed. "Good evening," I managed, forcing my voice to sound polite. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she studied me through narrowed eyes as she slid into the back seat. "Driver," she said, her voice smooth but commanding. "What's your name?" "Megan." "Megan what?" I hesitated. "Just Megan." Her reflection in the rearview mirror leaned forward slightly, her sharp blue eyes locking on mine. "Megan Parker." My stomach dropped. "You're Elaine Parker's daughter, aren't you?" The car suddenly felt too small, too silent. My hands froze on the wheel. I almost laughed. "I'm sorry, ma'am. You must be mistaken. My mother, she died when I was 12. The woman smiled. And it wasn't a cruel smile. It was knowing heavy with something I couldn't name. "No, dear. Elaine didn't die. Not then." My pulse thundered in my ears. The traffic light ahead turned green, but I couldn't move. I eased the car to the curb, my fingers trembling on the steering wheel. "Who are you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. She reached into her handbag and pulled out a cream-colored business card with gold-embossed letters. "Constance Drummond, co-founder, Genaris Pharmaceuticals. Your mother and I started Pfizer's first real competitor in 1978, she said. She was brilliant, unstoppable until she disappeared. "I don't understand," I said, my throat tight. "My father told me she died of cancer. I saw the death certificate." Constance shook her head slowly. "Your father forged it. He took you, changed your last name, and vanished. Elaine searched for you for years. I couldn't breathe. The world outside blurred with tears and rain. "That's impossible," I whispered. "Why would he do that?" "Because she was becoming powerful," Constance said. "Too powerful for a man like him to stand beside. He couldn't handle her success." My chest ached. For years, I'd blamed myself for losing everything, for not being strong enough. Now a stranger was telling me my entire life was built on a lie. Constance's hand rested gently on the back of my seat. Your mother never stopped building, Megan, and she never stopped preparing. Before she passed, she made sure you'd have everything she left behind. I stared at her in the mirror, my reflection pale and hollow-eyed. What did she leave me? Constance's lips curved into a faint, knowing smile. Enough to destroy the man who destroyed you. The rain outside had softened to a whisper, but inside my car, it felt like a storm was brewing. I sat frozen, my breath fogging the windshield as Constance calmly opened her leather folder on the back seat. You should see this, she said. The first photo was grainy, my mother, Elaine, standing in front of a building with a bold metal sign, Genaris Pharmaceuticals, 1989. Her hair was shorter, streaked with silver, her posture confident. She looked alive, powerful. Behind it, more photos. My mother shaking hands with U.S. senators, standing at conferences, smiling beside lab equipment. The timestamps spanned decades 1997, 2008, 2015. My throat tightened. That can't be her. It is, Constance said softly. She never stopped working, never stopped fighting, and never stopped looking for you. I blinked hard, trying to steady my voice. I went to her funeral. I saw her casket. Constance gave a small, sorrowful nod. Your father forged everything, the certificate, the reports, even the obituary. He couldn't accept being married to a woman the world admired. So one night, while she was in Chicago for a medical summit, he took you and disappeared. The words hit like physical blows. I remembered flashes, suitcases by the door, a long car ride in the dark, my father whispering, "Don't cry, Meg. We're going home." I thought it was a dream. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. She looked for me? Every day. She hired private investigators, wrote letters to schools, hospitals, licensing boards. But your father was careful. No credit cards, no records. You became someone else, Megan Parker, instead of Megan Elaine. Tears blurred the photos in my lap. I felt like I was staring into another woman's life, one that had been stolen from me. Why didn't she come find me when I grew up? I asked. I was in college. My name was in the papers when I opened my clinic. She could have. She wanted to, Constance interrupted gently. But by then, she saw you were successful. She didn't want to destroy the version of reality your father had built for you. She waited for the right time when you'd need her most. Her words settled heavily in the silence that followed. Constance slid a sealed envelope across the seat. This is the proof, her last message to you. Inside were photocopies of legal documents, trust deeds, corporate filings, and a handwritten letter with my name on it. My dearest Megan, if you're reading this, I'm gone. But I want you to know that every step of my journey, every company I built, was for you. I've left behind the truth and the power to use it. Don't let them break you like they tried to break me. My vision blurred again. The words for you glowed through the paper like light behind fog. She died 3 years ago, Constance continued quietly. Heart failure. She held your medical school graduation photo when she passed. I bit my lip to keep from sobbing. All this time, she was 2 hours away in Boston. Constance nodded. And before she died, she did one last thing. She bought 15% of Blackwell Industries, your father-in-law's company. I looked up sharply. What? She'd been investigating him for years. She knew what kind of man he was, how deep his corruption ran. She was waiting for the moment he would hurt you, because she knew he would. I could barely whisper. Why? Constance's eyes gleamed in the rearview mirror. Because your mother believed revenge doesn't need to be rushed. It just needs to be inherited. My hands trembled. Somewhere in that stormy night, the pieces of my shattered life began to rearrange, not as ruins, but as a map. A plan written long before I knew I'd need it. And my mother, the woman I'd mourned for 34 years, had just handed me the weapon she built to save me. The envelope on my lap felt heavier than gold. I traced my mother's handwriting with my fingertips, steady, elegant, unmistakably hers. Elaine Parker, Ph.D. Even dead. Her presence filled the car like oxygen after drowning. Constance adjusted her glasses and handed me another document, this one stamped with corporate seals. These, she said, are the transfer certificates. Elaine bought her shares of Blackwell Industries piece by piece through shell corporations over 20 years. By the time she died, she controlled 15%. I blinked. My father-in-law's company? The same Blackwell Industries that bankrolls half the court system? Constance nodded, a glimmer of pride in her eyes. She called it poetic justice. But that's not all, Megan. Look deeper. The next pages showed signatures Richard Blackwell's name over and over beside accounts registered in offshore banks. Bribes, payments, political donations that looped back to him. Constance spoke evenly, but her tone carried the weight of thunder. Elaine gathered everything. Wire transfers, hidden contracts, even recorded conversations. Your mother was a scientist, meticulous, patient. She built evidence the way others build fortunes. I flipped through the pages, my pulse hammering. There it was, the Gavel Project. Hundreds of pages labeled, dated, cross-referenced, proof that the man who destroyed me had been corrupt for decades. She meant for this to surface when you were ready, Constance said softly. She knew the Blackwells would ruin you. She predicted it, and she wanted you to have a weapon strong enough to burn them down. I swallowed hard. And now I have it. Constance smiled faintly. You have more than that. She left you a controlling trust, one that, combined with her partner's shares, gives you 41% of Blackwell Industries. That's enough to remove Richard Blackwell from his own board. The world tilted. All the humiliation, the nights crying in silence, the endless rejections, suddenly they weren't the end of my story. They were the setup. I stared at the highway through the rain-streaked windshield. She planned this for decades. Elaine was never a woman who acted without purpose, Constance replied. She knew power isn't taken, it's prepared for. I closed my eyes and saw it. The courtroom where Judge Blackwell smirked as he crushed my life. The way he'd leaned close and whispered, "You'll never work again." A hot tear slid down my cheek, not of sadness but fury laced with awe. He took everything from me, I said. But he never knew he was already working for my mother. Constance's lips curved in a small, knowing smile. She used to say justice should feel like gravity. Slow, certain, inevitable. Outside, the rain stopped. For the first time in years, I looked up and saw the reflection of city lights shimmering on wet asphalt like 1,000 tiny flames lighting a path. I whispered. How do I start? With courage, Constance said. And with patience. Elaine left everything in the care of Whitman and Cole, her attorneys in Boston. They've been searching for you since her passing. I nodded, adrenaline coursing through me. The years of despair, the helplessness, all of it shifted into focus. As I drove Constance to her destination, my hands no longer shook. Every mile felt like a step closer to my mother. Every turn, a return to the life she'd been building in the shadows. By the time she stepped out, she turned back and said one final thing that would echo for months afterward. The truth doesn't just set you free, Megan. It gives you back everything they stole. When I pulled away, the reflection of her pearls faded in the rearview mirror, but for the first time in years, I wasn't running from my past. I was driving straight toward it. The next morning, I drove to Boston with the envelope still clutched to my chest like a lifeline. The air smelled like winter rain and gasoline sharp, alive. I didn't sleep, couldn't eat. My mother's handwriting replayed in my head like a heartbeat. Don't let them break you like they tried to break me. Whitman and Cole's law firm sat in a tall glass tower overlooking the harbor. The receptionist's expression shifted when I gave my name. Dr. Megan Parker? She whispered, then hurried away. Minutes later, a silver-haired man appeared with a folder under his arm. Miss Parker, he said, his voice gentle. We've been waiting for you for 3 years. My throat tightened. You knew my mother? He nodded. She was extraordinary, determined. She left explicit instructions that if you ever came, we were to give you everything. He led me to a private conference room and laid out several binders, thick and labeled, Trust A, Elaine Parker Estate, Blackwell Industries Share Records, and one smaller folder, the Gavel Project. This, he said, tapping the smallest one, is what your mother called her masterpiece. Evidence spanning over 2 decades, money laundering, bribery, case fixing. Enough to take down a federal judge. I opened it. Inside were flash drives, photocopied ledgers, even recorded phone transcripts. My father-in-law's name appeared again and again beside payments, signatures, and false case dismissals. The lawyer's eyes softened. She built all this while running a pharmaceutical empire, and she made sure you would inherit not only her wealth, but her war. My hands trembled as I whispered, "Why me?" "Because you're her only child. Because she knew you'd been raised to believe you were small, and she wanted to show you you were never small." For the first time, I smiled through tears. We spent hours reviewing everything. When I left, I carried 2 binders and a fire in my chest that no storm could extinguish. I returned to Connecticut quietly, changed my phone number, moved out of the laundromat apartment, and rented a tiny office space in New Haven. There, between Uber rides, I studied every page. Late nights became early mornings, piecing together the puzzle my mother had left behind. Wire transfers linking the Blackwells to politicians. Recorded conversations about bribes exchanged for verdicts. Photos of Judge Richard Blackwell receiving donations from law firms his rulings had favored. Every discovery fed something inside me that had been starved for too long purpose. 6 weeks later, I met with an FBI agent Constance connected me to. His expression changed as he scrolled through the files. "Where did you get this?" "My mother built it," I said. "I'm just finishing what she started." The investigation moved faster than I'd imagined. By spring, news stations were buzzing with whispers about a massive judicial corruption case. Then, one morning in March, 3 years to the week of my mother's death, my phone vibrated with a single text from Constance. "It's time." I turned on the TV just in time to see it, Judge Richard Blackwell being escorted out of his mansion in handcuffs, flanked by FBI agents. His face was pale, jaw tight, but his eyes looked terrified. The anchor's voice trembled. "Federal authorities have arrested Judge Richard Blackwell on charges of racketeering, tax evasion, and obstruction of justice. Investigators credit an anonymous whistleblower for the evidence that sparked the case. All askew as accurately of now, anonymous." That word made me smile. I turned off the TV and sank into the silence, my hands shaking not from fear but release. For the first time since my life had been destroyed, I wasn't a victim. I was my mother's daughter. And justice, real justice, was finally coming full circle. The day of the sentencing felt like standing inside a thundercloud. The courthouse was packed, reporters, cameras, murmurs bouncing off marble walls. I hadn't been inside one since the day Richard Blackwell destroyed me. And now I was back, not as the defendant, but as the shadow behind his downfall. When they brought him in, I barely recognized him. The arrogance was gone. The man who once strutted through courtrooms like he owned the law now shuffled in handcuffs, his expensive suit hanging loose on his shoulders. He looked up and saw me. For a second, his composure cracked. The flicker in his eyes wasn't guilt. It was disbelief. I could almost hear the thought forming in his mind. She survived. The judge presiding over the sentencing, one of the few in Connecticut untouched by his corruption, read through a list of charges that stretched for nearly 10 minutes. "For 23 years, the judge said, "you abused your power, manipulated justice, and destroyed lives for personal gain. Today, that ends." When the gavel hit, Richard flinched. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Then came my turn. The court granted me permission to speak as a victim witness. My legs trembled when I stood, but my voice was steady. "3 years ago, this man took everything from me," I began. "My home, my practice, my name. He promised I'd never work again, and for a while, he was right. I was broken, humiliated, erased." I looked straight at him. His jaw clenched, but he didn't meet my gaze. "What he didn't know," I continued, "was that long before he tried to destroy me, my mother had already built the weapon that would destroy him." The room went silent. I heard a few pens drop. "Her name was Dr. Elaine Parker," I said. "She founded Genaris Pharmaceuticals, a company that changed thousands of lives. She was brilliant, kind, and stronger than anyone I've ever known. He never met her, but he still tried to bury her daughter." For the first time, Richard looked at me directly. I saw something flicker there, not remorse, but fear. "You used the law as your hammer," I said quietly. "But my mother built the anvil you broke yourself on." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The judge cleared his throat. "Is there anything you wish to say to the defendant?" I nodded. "Yes." I walked to the prosecution table and pulled a folder from my bag. Inside were the final documents transferring Blackwell Industries' controlling shares to the Elaine Parker Foundation for Justice and Education. This company once funded corruption, I said, sliding the papers across the table toward the clerk. Now, it will fund scholarships for women in medicine and law, the very institutions you tried to twist. Richard's face went white. He started, but his voice faltered. You told me I'd never work again, I said, my tone calm but sharp. You were half right. I don't work for people like you anymore. I build what you can't destroy. Tenged. The judge banged his gavel once more, sentencing Richard Blackwell to 18 years in federal prison, with no chance of parole. His son, my ex-husband Daniel, sat behind him, eyes glassy, mouth tight. He looked smaller, too, like the world had suddenly shrunk around him. As the bailiffs led Richard away, he turned once, staring at me over his shoulder. You think you've won, he hissed. I took a slow breath. No, I said softly. My mother did. He stumbled slightly as the guard pulled him forward, and the sound of the cuffs clinking echoed like the final note of a song that had taken 40 years to finish. When I stepped out into the sunlight, cameras flashed, but I didn't stop. The air smelled of rain and freedom. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of being seen, because the woman I thought I'd lost, my mother, had turned her death into my resurrection. And now, standing under the courthouse steps where he once vowed to ruin me, I finally understood. He hadn't ended my life. He'd just cleared the path for me to reclaim it. A year later, I still drive past that courthouse sometimes. The stone pillars don't feel so heavy anymore. The ghosts that used to wait for me at every red light have gone quiet. Justice doesn't erase scars, it just teaches you to stop apologizing for them. I reopened my dental clinic under a new name, the Parker Wellness Center. Same hands, same care, but now the sign above the door reads, founded in memory of Dr. Elaine Parker. Every Friday, we host free dental days for families who can't afford health care. The first time, a single mother hugged me and whispered, "Thank you, Dr. Parker. Nobody's ever done this for us." I thought of my mom and smiled. I never wanted revenge to make me bitter. I wanted it to make me better. The money from my mother's estate built something she would have loved, the Elaine Parker Foundation for Justice and Education. It funds scholarships for women in medicine, biotech, and law, the ones told they're too ambitious, the ones who hear no and keep going anyway. Every time I hand out a scholarship certificate, I see a spark of my mother in their eyes, fierce, brilliant, unstoppable. One evening, after a long clinic shift, I drove through downtown, the same streets I used to roam in my Uber days, the same flickering streetlights, the same half-empty gas station, but now they didn't make me feel small. They reminded me of how far I'd climbed. That's when I picked her up, a young dental student with dark circles under her eyes and a coffee cup clutched in her hand. She slumped into the back seat, exhausted. Rough day? I asked, catching her reflection in the rearview mirror. 30-hour shift, she groaned. Sometimes I think my dad's right. He says I'm wasting my life becoming a dentist. I laughed softly. Can I tell you something? Sure, she murmured. I've been a doctor, a failure, a cab driver, and a comeback story. I lost everything once, my home, my work, my name. But I learned that what defines you isn't what you lose, it's what you rebuild. She leaned forward slightly. You sound like there's a story behind that. I smiled. There is. My mother built an empire in secret, all while the world thought she was gone. And when the time came, she gave me everything I needed to rise, not money, not fame, but the proof that I was never alone. For a moment the car was quiet except for the hum of the engine and the rain tapping the windshield. Did you ever regret becoming a dentist? She asked. I shook my head. Never. Not when I lost it all. Not when I was driving Uber just to survive. My mother used to say, healing people is a kind of power no one can take away from you. She was right. When we reached her apartment, she hesitated before getting out. Thank you, she said softly. I needed to hear that tonight. She left a $50 tip on the app. I watched her walk into the building, head held higher than when she'd gotten in. For the first time in a long time, I felt peace, not the kind that forgets the past, but the kind that honors it. As I drove home, the sky over the city was streaked with the faintest light dawn chasing the last of the darkness away. I whispered into the quiet car, "We did it, Mom," because in the end, it wasn't revenge that defined me. It was legacy, a mother's foresight, a daughter's courage, and the truth that survived them both. The Blackwells believed power meant control. Elaine Parker proved real power was patience, the kind that waits decades, outlasts corruption, and still finds a way to love from beyond the grave. And as the sun rose over Connecticut, I realized the greatest gift my mother ever gave me wasn't wealth or justice. It was freedom.